Have you ever trusted two people so completely that you would have bet your life on them? I did. My name is Daniel. I'm 33 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed I had the perfect life. I had a loving wife, Emma, and a best friend, Ryan, who had been by my side since high school. If someone had told me those two people would destroy my life together, I would have laughed. But that's exactly what happened. It all started on a normal Tuesday afternoon. I was at work when I received an email from our bank asking me to verify a large transfer request. Emma usually handled our shared finances, so I assumed it was something she forgot to mention. When I opened the attached document, my heart nearly stopped. The transfer wasn't for a vacation. It wasn't for a house. It was a payment labeled Final Wedding Venue Balance. Wedding? I stared at the screen. We'd been married for 5 years. Why would there be a wedding payment? I called Emma immediately, but she didn't answer. Then I called Ryan. Straight to voicemail. Something felt terribly wrong. That evening, Emma came home acting completely normal. I casually asked her about the payment. She froze for just a second. Then she smiled and said it was for her cousin's wedding. I wanted to believe her. But something inside me said, she's lying. That night, while she slept, I logged into our shared cloud account. There were hundreds of photos. Most were ordinary. Until I found a hidden folder. Inside were professional wedding pictures. Emma, wearing a white wedding dress. Ryan, standing beside her in a tuxedo. They were holding hands. Kissing. Smiling at the camera. The date on the photos? 3 months earlier. I couldn't breathe. My own wife had secretly married my best friend while still legally married to me. But the nightmare wasn't over. The next morning, I confronted them both. Instead of apologizing, Ryan laughed. Emma looked annoyed, not guilty. Then Ryan said something I'll never forget. Daniel, since you're financially stable, we thought you'd help pay for the ceremony. It's not like you need the money. I honestly thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Emma nodded as if the request was completely reasonable. She even said, "You've always been generous." At that moment, something inside me broke. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply smiled. And said, "Sure." They thought they'd won. They had no idea what I was planning. Part 2. The moment I told them, "Sure, I'll help pay," their faces lit up. Ryan actually reached across the table and patted me on the shoulder. "I knew you'd be reasonable," he said with a grin. Emma smiled too. "See? I told you Daniel would understand." Understand? The woman I'd spent 5 years building a life with had secretly married another man, and they thought I would finance their dream wedding. I smiled politely, but inside, I had already made a decision. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to let them destroy themselves. Over the next 2 weeks, I acted like everything was normal. I transferred a small deposit for the venue so they wouldn't suspect anything. They became even more comfortable around me. Ryan started sending me links to expensive decorations. Emma asked if I could cover the photographer too. Every message they sent became evidence. I saved screenshots, emails, bank records, voice messages. Everything. Then I hired one of the best divorce attorneys in the city. When I showed him the wedding photos and the financial requests, he looked at me in disbelief. "You've documented all of this?" I nodded. He smiled. "Good. Don't confront them again. Let them keep talking." That advice changed everything. Over the next few days, Emma unknowingly admitted several things in text messages. She confessed she had hidden money from our joint account. She admitted Ryan had been living in the apartment I was paying for whenever I traveled for work. Even worse. She joked that I was their personal ATM. Reading those words hurt more than I expected. Ryan wasn't any better. One night he texted me. "Don't forget the catering payment. We want this wedding to look expensive." I replied with one word. Absolutely. Meanwhile, my lawyer quietly prepared the divorce filing and gathered financial records. Then came the biggest surprise. During the financial review, we discovered that Emma had been using my credit cards to buy Ryan expensive gifts for nearly a year. Designer watches. Luxury shoes. A new gaming PC. Thousands of dollars. Every purchase was documented. Every receipt had her name. Every payment came from my account. My lawyer leaned back in his chair and smiled. They think you're paying for a wedding. They don't realize they're paying for their own mistakes. I looked at the growing stack of evidence on his desk. For the first time in weeks. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. And their wedding day was only 10 days away. The wedding day finally arrived. The venue looked exactly the way Ryan wanted: expensive flowers, crystal chandeliers, a live string quartet, and dozens of guests dressed in designer clothes. Most of them had no idea I was still legally married to Emma. As far as they knew, I was just an old friend who had moved on. I arrived early, wearing a black suit and carrying a small envelope. Ryan spotted me first. He walked over with a huge smile. "I knew you'd come. Thanks again for helping with the wedding." I smiled. "Wouldn't miss it." Emma approached a few minutes later. She looked nervous, but she assumed it was because I was finally accepting the situation. She whispered, "Thank you for making this easy." I simply nodded. Inside the envelope wasn't a wedding gift. It contained copies of the divorce papers my lawyer had prepared, along with a detailed financial report showing every unauthorized purchase, every transfer from our joint account, and every message in which they asked me to pay for their wedding. I had another set of documents with my lawyer, who was waiting nearby. Just before the ceremony began, the wedding coordinator announced that there would be a short delay because one of the final payments hadn't cleared. Ryan frowned and looked at me. "Daniel, did the last transfer go through?" I looked him in the eyes. "No." "What do you mean, no?" "I cancelled it." His smile disappeared. Emma stepped forward. "You said you'd pay." "I said I'd help," I replied calmly. "I never said I'd fund a lie." Guests nearby began to notice the conversation. Ryan's voice grew louder. "You can't do this today." I took the envelope from my jacket and handed it to Emma. "Open it." She unfolded the papers. The color drained from her face. "What's this?" "Your divorce papers," I said. "And the complete record of every dollar taken from our shared accounts." Ryan grabbed the documents and flipped through the pages. The screenshots. The bank statements. The receipts. The text messages calling me their personal ATM. He looked stunned. Before either of them could speak, my lawyer walked over and calmly introduced himself. He explained that all future communication should go through his office. The room fell silent. Several guests exchanged confused looks. Emma's parents stepped closer, asking what was happening. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "I discovered months ago that my wife secretly held a wedding ceremony with another man while we were still married. I also discovered that they expected me to pay for today's celebration." The silence became overwhelming. Some guests looked at Emma in disbelief. Others quietly walked away from the reception area. Ryan tried to argue that there had been a misunderstanding. But the documents spoke louder than excuses. For the first time that day, neither of them had anything to say. And the celebration they had spent months planning was beginning to fall apart. Part 4, Final. For nearly a minute, no one spoke. The only sound in the ballroom was the soft music still playing in the background. Then Emma's father broke the silence. He turned to his daughter and asked, "Is what Daniel said true?" Emma couldn't answer. She stared at the floor, gripping the papers with trembling hands. Ryan tried to step in. "It's not as bad as it looks. We were going to explain everything." I looked at him. "When? After I paid for your honeymoon too?" A few guests couldn't hide their reactions. Some quietly shook their heads, while others picked up their coats and left. The wedding coordinator walked over again. She explained that the remaining balance had to be paid immediately or the reception would end. Ryan reached for his phone. His credit card was declined. He tried another. Declined again. Emma looked at him in panic. "I thought you had enough money." Ryan whispered, "I was counting on Daniel's transfer." For the first time, they realized they had built their entire plan around money that was never theirs. Within the hour, the venue staff began clearing away decorations because the final payment had not been made. Guests slowly disappeared. The dream wedding they had imagined ended before the first dance. A few months later, my divorce was finalized. The court reviewed the financial records and ordered that the remaining shared assets be divided according to the law. The money that had been taken from our joint account was also considered during the settlement. As for Ryan and Emma, their relationship didn't last. Without the excitement of secrecy, they began blaming each other for everything that had happened. The trust they had broken in others eventually disappeared between themselves. I heard they separated less than a year later. As for me, I sold the old house, moved to a new city, started a new job. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. One evening, I received a message from an unknown number. It was Emma. She wrote only one sentence. "I never thought I'd lose everything." I looked at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it without replying. Some chapters don't need a response. They just need an ending. Moral of the story. Betrayal may seem like a shortcut to happiness, but trust is difficult to rebuild once it's broken. Respect, honesty, and integrity last much longer than deception, and actions often have consequences that no one expects. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this Reddit-style story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more dramatic stories with unexpected twists.